Pow Comic Hour with your host, Andrew Honor.
And Chris Ramos.
Tonight, we are delving into a character study of sorts with Moon Knight.
Moon Knight.
Yes. And, you know, this is a very complex character. Maybe one of the most complex characters Marvel has. And so he's easily compared to as being Marvel's answer to Batman.
Yeah, I mean, you see it. He's all white. Batman's all black.
Right. They have capes, you know,
yeah.
they do things to hide their face, but he does in a different way.
Similar mansions, you know, stuff like that.
Sure. But I guess in contrast to that, Moon Knight has personality disorder. That's the big thing. And so he has, I guess, a total of 4 personalities. He has his Mark Spector personality.
Mark Spector is a secret agent, soldier thing.
Yes, he used to be in the Marines. That's where he kind of dives into that.
He's like the Mission Impossible guy.
Yeah. And then there's Jake Lockley,
who's the cab driver.
Yep.
And he's the get your ear on the ground, rubbing with the everyman, figuring out, you know, what do the homeless know and what do the vagrants know. That's the cab driver.
Yeah, kind of like the street level.
When he needs his information.
Sure. And then there's Stephen Grant.
He's the millionaire.
Billionaire. Yeah. Money is not our problem to him.
When it was written, he was a millionaire, but he's going to have to be a billionaire about now.
Right. And then there is obviously the superhero personality of Moon Knight.
Yes.
Sure.
His superhero.
Right. And so...
So we read the volumes that we're reading is I read it digitally. I read the
Epic Collection.
Epic Collection, which is, if it was a physical print, it's a soft cover collected edition where they try to collect the story of each character more than just like one artist or one writer. So they kind of say, oh, all right, we're going to collect them in order, in chronological order, and put it into a volume that's like 400 pages long. So when you hold it and you're reading it, it's not so bad.
Yeah. They're thick, but not super.
Yeah. And they're
chunky.
Since it's a soft cover, it's kind of just like reading a large trade paperback.
Right.
You know?
And it's all printed in chronological order of when they came out.
Yeah. And they do that for all the superheroes like Spider-Man and X-Men.
A lot of lines.
So there's a huge following of the Epic Collection, and that's what I read digitally. And then Andrew read.
I read it in the Moon Knight Omnibus, Volume 1. And so this collected the Epic Collection, the Volume 1 of that, and probably half of the second volume as well. So it gives you a little bit more than the Epic, and it's also an oversized format, which is always nice. We love oversized books and nice collected editions. But again, different price ranges, different for everyone's perspective and things like that. Still collects it in chronological order, but however you can read these stories, we always promote that.
Yeah, and the Omnibus is cool too because, of course, it really builds, for this one, it builds on Moon Knight's origins, first appearances, because Moon Knight didn't just show up in his own comic.
Yes.
He had to have a lot of guest appearances in other comics that were really popular at the time. So his very first appearance was
Werewolf by Night, number 32 of August of 1975. So all the way back in the 70s.
72.
Oh, 72, 75.
Yeah, that's close enough.
But
that's when he just appeared as a character. They threw him in a popular magazine at the time, which was Werewolf by Night.
Yeah, it was a great horror series, and they thought, oh, let's stick him in here. He kind of wrestles down Jack Russell, the werewolf man, and that was Marvel's Werewolf Man. And so he kind of just goes through that. We kind of learn just the beginnings of that, of just kind of what is Moon Knight? How is he? What's the story? You know,
now, when he was in that first appearance, I mean, you didn't really get the big idea that he had schizophrenia.
Yeah.
Like, he was a superhero for most of the issues. So you didn't really get to see
he was kind of like a mercenary personality.
Yeah. And he had a really good, like, snarky attitude, and he had a lot of just sort of this lip that he could throw back, and I think people connected with him on some level at that time because they thought, well, he's kind of funny, like
Right.
he
Yeah.
looks like,
Quippy.
yeah, and he's holding his own against this werewolf,
Right.
so you could tell he was pretty tough. Actually,
Yeah.
I think he defeated the werewolf, or
Right.
well, captured him.
And then he kind of hops around, and as writers would come at it with the Defenders, he had come into, Spider-Man, he guest appeared, and he had this great run in Hulk magazine as the years went on. And it was until that we got to the 1980 run with Doug Mensch and one of the co-creators when he started back Werewolf by Night, and Bill Sienkiewicz, who was coming into his own at the time, that the character of Mark Spector as Moon Knight started fully taking on a life of its own.
Yeah, so then Moon Knight finally got his own series. Moon Knight #1 came out, let me see, November 1980.
The 80s.
Look at that, throwing it back. All right.
Sure. That's where comics were kind of starting to get going again, kind of being taken serious more adult issues were being addressed.
Yeah, the
things like
80s
that.
was a big pivotal change in the mindset of what a superhero is.
And what are they dealing with?
Yeah. So for them to come out with a superhero that was number one, violent.
Yes.
Number two, had all these personalities that were sort of like, I guess if you wanted to have a secret identity, it would be great to have a few of them.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what they pulled from was, Moon Knight was not only just a pretty competent fighter, but he also could switch over and get information or
from different
access,
sources.
in different ways. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which, none of his personalities are detectives, right? He just kind of does it on his own. And he kind of just, right? Like, I guess compared to like Batman, he didn't really
Batman's
start
the
off
world's
as
greatest detective.
But they still wanted him to, do a lot of digging, a lot of street. They first wanted him to be a street level hero, kind of like Daredevil, but Iron Fist, things like that. He's still very active. They just wanted to approach this very differently than the others. So that was really interesting to me.
Yeah, and the way that they first had him written in his own series too, they did a small origin story.
Yeah. Which is still very brief because I think even though they were like still fleshing out this character and kind of peeling back the layers of how Mark Spector and all of his personalities interact with Moon Knight, the origin was still like, okay, it's Egyptian. There's a moon god. There's Egyptian moon god called Khonshu, the moon god. You see him in the trailer, and the movie that's coming out later this year, or this coming week, I should say.
The TV series.
The TV series, yes. And so that's partially why we're doing this. But they weren't. This character wasn't fully developed from square one. They were peeling back this onion, and then they were kind of developing it as they go.
Well, they probably said, all right, so he was in Hulk, he was in Spider-Man, he was in Defenders, he was in Werewolf, he was in, a couple of appearances. Let's just give him a shot. And they probably came up with that pretty fast. They're probably like, hey, you guys want to write Moon Knight?
Right.
Pull him out and let's give him his own line. And that goes out next month.
Right. Or, what's part of the world we haven't accessed yet? Or, he's this Egyptian god. That's very different from what anybody else is. So that's kind of a cool twist on it too.
Yeah, Marvel doesn't really have a big, Egyptian.
Not right off the bat. No.
Yeah, a big pull from there.
Sure.
So you get the idea that he has some sort of other worldly sort of powers that make him more than human, because and you get the idea right away that he's taking damage on a level that you're like, okay, he's got to be super strength somehow, right?
Right. Yeah. And you kind of learn as like the series develops, and you learn like his equipment that he uses and things like that. But you realize that it's not really prevalent that the god he worships, Khonshu, he isn't like in his face about everything right in this series, but the moon does give him power. Depending what phase of the moon is, it's kind of in the background. It comes up, I think, as later on, the decades that the writers would, kind of see, oh, what can we do a new twist on this and that.
Yeah, like it was almost it's almost like when Spider-Man is running around and then the writers are like, oh, he's doing pretty good. Let's make him run out of web fluid.
Yeah.
Or other superheroes have some sort of like Batman, oh, take his utility belt away,
Sure.
So for Moon Knight, I noticed that too. It was almost like a writer's, not a crutch, but just something that they could pull from and say,
Right.
all right, he's having a pretty good run of it. What can we throw at him? Oh, how about an eclipse is coming? And
Right.
eclipse takes the moon away.
Yeah.
So you're like,
That's
oh,
really
there's a lot
cool.
of eclipses around
And there's a
here.
lot of room for breadth and creativity just to bring to the character, and what does it need to do to serve the story and make it exciting.
Well, I like that they kept him mysterious too. They didn't
Yeah,
just
too.
throw everything out there at once.
Yeah.
And
Which is
really
very different from all the other characters that are going around.
Yeah, like most of the origin stories is like, this is all this character can do. This is where they got the powers, and this is who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Where Moon Knight, it was like, these are his powers. He doesn't get to access them all the time because sometimes he just walks into a room and he's like, I'm Mark Spector now. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then he walks out of the room and he's like, I'm Jake Lockley.
Right.
now.
He's got to swap
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
I
was
gotta
wondering-
change clothes.
Yeah. He does that in his taxi cab in a couple
Yeah.
of those scenes, or like he doesn't.
Because he needs to. Like
yeah.
he had a switch, and whatever he was working on or whatever he was doing, he's like, no, I am now Jake Lockley.
Right.
So it was really an interesting way to do that. And you can see where they would have a lot of fun with that later on, I think.
Yeah.
Other writers.
For sure. And so it was really cool just to see this character evolve over time and just see what different writers could bring to it. I thought that was very interesting, something you don't get to see every day.
No, he was really thrown around for quite a while, and you
Right.
got to see what, I mean, not everyone here. I'm looking at the back of the omnibus. So for those of you who don't know, we talk about omnibus all the time, but the Marvel omnibus is about, is this one 1,000 pages? probably?
Yes.
They're usually
I
about
think it's
1,000
about
pages.
960-ish, but
Close.
1,000 with the extras.
Close enough. But it's a oversized hardcover edition, and they collect all the issues. And then on the back of the book, on the back of the dust jacket, they usually show all the issues they collect, which is kind of
Mhm.
cool just to look at them and be like, I remember those covers.
Right.
'Cause they don't really focus on the covers very much. I mean,
Yeah.
they're in the Omni, but they're not like always part of it, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, for Moon Knight, I mean, I think he went through 4 or 5 different, runs before he got his own.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a cool way to
Mhm.
see
And I mean,
it.
that was 4 to 6 years, depending on when you think he
that's true.
starts. But till he actually got to his main series, which is kind of common thing to happen,
He earned his place.
He
See?
did.
It's like an actor or an actress being just, co-stars and then finally getting their own series.
Sure.
It's pretty much exactly what
I
it
mean,
is.
Doug Mensch, he was, trying to get him in other series, trying to shop this character around, putting him in the Hulk and things like that, team ups, until a point where you can kind of, if you have a good enough pitch to do like a solo series, why not?
So let's talk a little bit about his powers.
Yes.
When he switches into the Moon Knight character,
Yeah.
they refer to it in this run as just like white leather, sort of
Mhm.
like a white costume.
Yeah.
But I know that later on, I'm talking in the 90s, maybe early 2000s, that it's an actual like strengthened adamantium fabric.
Kevlar
Fabric. Yeah.
Mhm.
So it gets pretty strong. So like his costume itself is really, really durable later on.
Yeah.
But in this first run, it looks like it's like literally just fabric, like a costume he found
sure.
or made.
Mhm.
I think it's kind of cool if you really look at the design of it. His cloak is
He actually uses it consciously to
Yeah.
float and
Like a
hover, like a glider.
glider, yeah.
Yeah, that's
but it
right.
connects at his wrists.
Yeah.
So it's kind of neat. Like his
Mhm.
cloak comes up and around and connects at his wrist.
Mhm.
But then when he's gliding or jumping,
Yeah.
it looks like
It's
a
like, yeah.
moon. It looks
Mhm.
like a crescent
Oh,
moon.
I didn't know.
That's
I didn't think about it. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
I mean, that's how that's
Sure.
how all the pictures are. It's
Yeah,
like this
that makes
crescent
sense.
moon floating down.
Right. Imagery.
Yes, yes. Details matter. See, like that's it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because it's like the crescent moon.
So
Yeah.
they kind of pick up on that part of it all the time, and
Right.
and he's always got it attached to his wrist. So if
Mhm.
he's fighting, his cloak kind of moves with him, which is really, I think, kind of a cool. Little
Yeah,
touch.
definitely from character, like just give him a little uniqueness and
So it's not a
flowing in the
cape.
imagery. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a cape, but it's a functional cape.
It's
I
a
guess.
functional wraparound.
Sure.
And
Take
then
that, Batman.
Yeah, Batman, you should be holding your cape all the time. And then the other part of his weaponry is a truncheon, which is a kind of like a nightstick, you
Yeah.
know, like a metal bar, I guess.
Yeah.
That he throws around and bounces around.
Right,
Well,
yeah,
Daredevil
and-
has one.
Sure. And he can use it to, grapple. It's got a grappling hook in it, to get around buildings and things like that if he needed to, or escape out of something really quick. You don't have the wind to glide you up.
Yeah.
So you got to have that once in a while.
So when he's Moon Knight, he
Yeah.
doesn't have a gun.
No.
But when he's Mark Spector,
he
which
might
is-
use one because he
yeah,
was trained.
his
He was in the
army
armed
guy.
forces. He was a Marine, so he does know how to. He's a combat expert. In some cases, he did some mercenary work with them after that.
So
And I guess when you think about his weapon, his truncheon, think about it like Daredevil's weapon.
Yeah.
They both kind of use it similar ways.
He throws it at people to trip them up.
Yep.
He uses it to beat them up.
Sure. He just doesn't use it as a walking stick. That's
yeah,
all.
there you go.
All right. But he also has for his calling card that is also a functional calling card. He has like they're not darts, but they're like crescent, like
Just call them a batarang. Just
they're
do it.
kind of similar to a
Yes.
batarang. But he throws that at people.
They're
so
a batarang, but they're shaped like
they're
a
like
moon.
and that's his calling card. Sometimes he doesn't throw it at him. Sometimes he just leaves and goes,
Yeah,
It's
so
from Moon Knight.
So Spider-Man
Moon Knight
leaves
was
a
here.
note that says your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Yeah.
But then Moon Knight actually just tosses this sharp,
Right. It's like a kunai,
Yeah.
It's a dart.
this half moon
Yeah.
blade. He just throws it into the wall and leaves.
Right.
He doesn't write his name
Sure.
anywhere.
Oh, I forgot. So he does use his truncheon as nunchucks too. So
Oh,
he
yeah,
does
yeah.
have that. He does differentiate that from Daredevil.
That was
as well.
later on. Yeah, he
Mhm.
said, and he was like, "This is becoming all the rage in the martial arts."
You're
So
right.
it was really funny. He's
Yeah.
like adapting his armament,
Right,
for the age.
Always,
But
thinking of different technology and things like that.
Yeah, and on top of all of that, which I think, all this is leading to us talking a little bit about the,
Mooncopter.
yeah, oh God, yeah, let's talk about that in a minute. But all this is leading to how is all of this going to be translated into the Moon Knight TV,
TV
series
series, yes.
on
Awesome.
Disney Plus?
Yeah, with Oscar Isaac.
Yes,
The
that's gonna be
man.
awesome. And that's on March 30th. So
Yes.
this is leading up to that. But yeah, so then he himself, we've already said, has some sort of supernatural powers, truncheon,
Mhm.
mixed personalities, super strength, kind of super speed a little bit, not like super, but
he's just
strong.
he's
You
a
get
very
the idea.
athletic person.
Yeah, he's a very strong guy.
Yeah.
And you get the idea that he's a little unhinged every once in a while, but he does have a sidekick
Yes.
in the comics.
Yes. Like a sidekick, sir, is supporting cast. But
don't think
Frenchie.
He doesn't call him his sidekick.
Sure.
does he?
Frenchie, yeah, not traditional sidekick.
That's mean.
Sure. So Frenchie is his cohort, and they both served in one of the wars together. I think it was Vietnam, probably around that time period of sorts.
Yeah, for this. Well, that's funny that you mentioned it. I don't want to keep going off rabbit trails, but when Marvel wrote comics in the 70s, 80s, maybe early 90s, they
Mhm.
always referred it to Vietnam.
Yeah.
And then somewhere in there, they start referring it to the Persian Gulf War. or,
somewhere in that
so-
time period
yeah.
of things.
So
That's what I
now-
think they're referencing.
Yeah, so now they're not necessarily referencing Vietnam anymore, but they're referencing just the last war that America was in. And that's kind of cool that comics are keeping up with that.
Yeah. So yeah, they both served overseas together, and they they were just good friends after that. And so he comes back with Moon Knight.
Frenchie
and-
was his pilot then. Yeah?
Yes, yep.
Yeah.
I think they're still his pilot, but yeah, he pilots the moon copter. It takes, Spider-Man has his like dune buggy that he had one time,
Yeah.
and Batman has his Batmobile, but
No, he has
know,
his bat wing.
and he does have a Batwing and
But-
more cars,
But he
things
doesn't
like
have a pilot that follows
that.
him around.
Yeah,
So Frenchie follows him around town in
Sure.
a copter.
Yeah, which is very unique, because he doesn't want to drive through the city. He's got to take through his guys because the moon and things like that.
Yeah, he doesn't have a cool car. He just has a taxi.
Right. Yeah, he
So-
has his own taxi.
so
It's just a
un-
regular taxi when he's Jake
So
Lockley.
unless he becomes Jake Lockley, he doesn't use his taxi. So
Yeah.
so maybe Frenchie is there as sort of this grounding, idea that like even though he has a multiple personality, Frenchie is remembered by all his
Sure.
personalities.
He was, I guess, friends with Mark Spector when they were overseas.
Yes.
So it kind of ties into that.
So he is maybe his like grounding rod, like
Mhm.
his
Sure. Yeah.
his
Cool.
baseline. He's his
Yeah.
baseline sidekick. We're figuring it out.
But he does give a great story towards this end of the Omnibus. It's very cool. That's getting ahead of itself. But Doug Mensch does a very good job of fleshing out this cast. But he also has his girlfriend Marlene, who is just she's actually not as helpless as I think some other supporting female casts is.
Some heroines. on the
Heroines,
side, yeah.
Sure, there's some tropiness that does happen, but I think she's actually pretty good. It's fun to read, and she's a little interesting. And
There are some stories that are in the Hulk runs
Yeah.
and the Defenders, where she becomes sort of this maiden in distress a little bit, but then I don't know, they really pivot fast, and all of a sudden she's got a gun and she's shooting people. So you're like,
so
okay,
she has
cool.
some like secret agent stuff with her, and they as like I said, as we develop the stories and as the character becomes more fleshed out, so does the supporting cast. Which is great. And
That's his core group. That's his
core
people.
group. Yep.
Yeah.
Like there's other characters such as Crowley and some of the people from the diner that he frequents that he hires to help him do like shenanigans.
All right. We have to talk about Crowley. Okay.
Crowley. Okay.
So
What's your gripe with Crowley?
No, I don't have a gripe. So,
Okay.
all right. So he goes into a diner every once in a while, but he's usually going in there as Jake Lockley, which is his
Yes.
cab driver
Mhm.
personality. And it's always when he's like, I need to get information, and I'm going
Yeah.
to the taxi guy, right? So he
Mhm.
goes into this diner all the time, and Crowley is like a well-timed writing helper that just walks in
Yeah.
the diner and just has all the information all the time, right?
Yeah.
And he has
very
like
street level.
flies flying around him all
Sure.
the time.
Like he is a homeless person. And
Yes.
He lives in that community.
that's true.
And he does.
But he knows everything because of that. He knows all the bad
He
stuff.
knows what's being talked on the streets and things like that. And it's a very unique perspective to have, especially when you're trying to differentiate from Batman and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a problem with him. I think the cool part is like he's like, oh, I need answers. And then Crowley walks in and he's like, I heard this, I heard that.
Mhm.
But then you're like you said, he's not a detective. So for
Yeah.
him to get information or to figure things out, usually other people are telling him this.
Yeah.
So then as the reader, you're learning this at the same time.
Yeah, is Mark.
Which is
and,
really cool. So, but like
Mark and
sometimes
Moon
when
Knight.
you're reading Batman or other ones, you feel like Iron Man, even you're like, well, he's 10 steps ahead of me.
Yeah.
Right. But like, this is like, you're right there with him trying to figure this out at the same time, which is great.
And he doesn't rely on technology to do it for him, or he has a computer or anything like that.
No,
Like,
that's
that's what keeps him street level.
That's his oracle.
Yeah. But he also, I do appreciate that at the Steiner, he also like relies on this, the family, the Black family that supports him and things like that. So this supporting cast that we kind of learn to love and grow with, and keep reading and investing in the Moon Knight series, it's very diverse and things like that. So you're getting all these different
They
perspectives.
keep coming back.
They keep coming back, and more character growth is be had. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah, and when you read the whole run like we just did, I mean, I read, oh, how many? One, two, three, four, I don't know, like 14
Sure.
issues maybe,
Yeah.
you know, and you
Hmm.
read 20,
Yeah. 20,
30,
30.
30
Yeah.
issues.
Hmm.
So when you're reading it, it is really, really nice to see when he was his first appearance werewolf, the helicopter followed him around and that's how he got out, right?
Yeah.
Well, that seems to follow all the way through. And like you said, it gives an opportunity for readers to say, tell me more about Frenchie. Tell me more about
Yeah.
Marlene and tell me
Hmm.
more about this. And writers get the opportunity to put together an actual new world,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Is he in New York? Did I ever pick up on that?
I believe so. Yeah, or
Maybe.
Jersey,
I don't
kind
know
of
if
in
they
that
really.
sort of area.
Well,
in the
he bumps into Spider-Man,
Yeah.
I guess.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, Manhattan
yeah,
area, thing around that area, I
that's
suppose.
where all of the
Yeah,
superheroes are in the
right.
80s.
It's like, you know. But I guess some of the villains that we came across, at least when we got to the Sienkiewicz run, when it starts becoming a longer run, um, it was Bushman. So he's going.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure it's confirmed that we do have him in the series.
I only saw so Midnight Man,
The Midnight Man also, I
but
think,
he
might
was he
come
in the
around.
what you read, the 20?
Yes. Mhm.
Oh, see, I don't think I only read 1 through 4 of the
Yeah.
beginning. So Midnight Man, I guess we can talk about the TV series a little bit now.
Sure.
So the TV series is a original series by Disney Plus. It's coming out on March 30th. And to me, it's bringing another character that I think relatively unknown to the
Yeah.
average
Both
reader.
all of his villains, I think, are relatively unknown
Yeah,
still.
so like Moon Knight, I don't know. Moon Knight was popular in the 80s and 90s. It wasn't
Mhm.
like extremely popular now. So
No, and I just to back up, I think this is a great risk, and I think it's a great opportunity to explore all these unknown characters like Marvel has been doing right now.
yeah, and so yeah, bring this guy up, bring him in. I mean, get a great actor
Yeah,
like Oscar, and
yeah. Even though Oscar's been like a bunch of different roles,
yeah,
but he always plays like really interesting roles, and he does always good job.
yeah. So he was
Apocalypse.
in
Yeah.
oh yeah, and then
Yep.
but in the Star Wars movies,
Oh,
um,
yep. He was in that. Yeah.
he was in and he was in the new Dune movie. He was
Hmm.
Paul
Yeah.
Atreides' father.
Right.
So I think, yeah, number one, really cool to bring him in. Number two, the main villain, Midnight Man, who is just sort of like the opposite of Moon Knight. He's got like an all black costume, and Midnight has an all white costume.
Right.
But he was that actor passed away. That was the one. That was,
Yeah, he might have been. I know that was one like character that they talked about, and then
but they haven't
Ethan
confirmed
Hawke, right?
Marlene, have they?
They confirmed that it's a different female supporting character called
Oh.
Lila.
Oh, okay.
But what Marvel has been doing with some of these roles is they're like consolidating some of their supporting cast and some of
Storylines.
personality traits and stories, and putting them into their own characters that they made, which is fine. It's updating the roles a bit,
Yeah.
and it could be good. It's always interesting to see where they could explore and take these characters in new ways.
I mean, the meat and potatoes of Moon Knight
Yeah.
is his schizophrenia. And
Right.
it looks like just from the trailer that we're
They
getting,
leaned into it.
they really embrace that. Like,
Sure.
you're never, like, you can't figure out who he is and what he's doing and, what personality is at that
Yeah.
moment. I think that's cool to have a really flawed character like that. But I think that they're not using it as like just a like a writer's
Yeah.
idea. They're using it as these are genuine struggles that Moon Knight puts up with,
Yeah.
as he wants to he wants to solve this murder, or he wants to solve this crime, or follow up on a lead, but he can't, because now he just switched back over to his billionaire personality, and his billionaire personality doesn't want to do that,
Right. Which is really fun to watch.
Yeah.
And learn and grow.
I think it'll be
and
really cool to see.
yeah.
I'm excited
really
about
cool
the
to
series.
character development. So yeah, Midnight Man. I guess we briefly touched on that. Sort of the polar opposite of Moon Knight. Moon Knight, and that he's very rich and wealthy and things like that, but he's like the art collector. So he is very much like, oh, I have to have this art and I have to collect this and stuff like that. But I'm also rivals with Moon Knight because he has something that I want and I want him to get on my level and things like that.
That's his villain, is that he's an art
That's one of his villains.
collector?
Yeah. And he does do some returns, and I guess he gets like a messed up face because he gets burned really hard and things
Oh.
like that. So he does get built up more as the series goes on. And then Bushman's kind of like the scary villain, I guess.
Yeah. So all right. So
Very hardcore.
Bushman appeared in like Moon Knight #1,
Yep.
and
He was like his
that-
commanding officer in his mercenary life.
Yeah, and it was really written really good. You know,
Yeah.
the first issue of Moon Knight, like when they said, "All right, you got your own series," and they just put that out. There is some pretty adult themes in there, and there's some
Yes.
pretty serious writing. And I mean, it was a serious. It wasn't,
No.
happy-go-lucky at all.
Nope.
I mean, it was
Nope.
like,
We
no,
came a
we're
long way
going
from the
in.
Werewolf by Night days.
Yeah, it's like we're going in. Yeah.
Sure.
No, it was really a big reveal at the end of
Right.
every issue. I mean, it kept you going.
Mm-hmm. And so Bushman, he is, like we said, he was like commanding with the mercenary army. Him and Frenchie served in. So they already know who Bushman is, and Bushman knows who Mark is and things like that. And he was there at the time when they were trying to find like this hidden tomb where Khonshu was and things like that.
Yes.
So that was really cool. But see, the thing that makes Bushman scary, besides being very aggressive, like over the top aggressive and strong willed and things like that, he has this very menacing face where he like tattooed a mask on his face.
Like a skull.
Yeah, like a skull. Yeah, like a skull. Not different than Ghost Rider skull, but very just intimidating. And it's like,
And then he made all his teeth metal.
yeah.
He has
He
like
has
steel
metal
teeth and he
too.
bites people.
Right. But he's a very skilled warrior and things like that, and very military, dictator kind of personality traits that go with that. So, he's like trying to serve with them, but he's like, oh, this guy's going way too far. He's going way too far. He's hurting families and things like that. And definitely, every time Moon Knight thinks he kills him off, he always comes back in some sort of way. And
Classic villain.
classic villain, but just very over the top.
Well, and
It's scary.
if you think of like why did they write a guy like that? I think it's because even though Mark Spector is Moon Knight's special forces guy,
Yeah.
there's always that duality that they push in any kind of story of like, all right, so you're super special forces, CIA, like,
Mhm.
Army Ranger born killer guy, but do you have a conscience? You
Yeah.
know, like,
Definitely humanized.
yeah, when is it too far for you?
Right. Where's the line?
Yeah, where's
There's
the
the boundaries,
line in
yeah.
war?
Right.
And the Bushman, he decides to just keep going and use his training
Yeah.
to just say, well, I can do whatever I want. And so that's where you kind of see Moon Knight show his humanity a little bit of like, I care about the common man kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I guess, and then so those are his two main villains. I guess when I was reading along this omnibus and we were reading along in the epic, like Moon Knight deals with real world issues, poverty,
Yeah.
just thugs, drug dealing, things that people would deal with in America, I guess.
Yeah, you
in
never
that
see him
time
come
period.
across like a super overpowered villain.
No,
He's
yeah.
not jumping in and fighting with the Avengers and
Mhm.
beating back things like that.
Right.
He's-
They tried that when they were still before the main series happened. They were trying those things and they were written well, but it made it more realistic and you could draw in more in the series and care
Yeah.
more about who Moon Knight was when he was dealing with these ground level issues.
And they always had, just for a little more history. So Moon Knight has never stopped being a character in Marvel Comics. He was always just sort of there. Like he had his own series for a good run all the way through the 80s. But I think his actual series stopped in the 90s somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then whenever they had like a big event like Infinity War or Infinity Gauntlet, where
Yeah.
they did like any kind of huge crossover where they wanted to show every Marvel character,
Hmm.
he was always there,
Yeah.
so you could tell he was always like,
In the
he
background.
was an active duty superhero, but he
Sure.
never really had, I think his most popular moments was in the 80s. In fact, one of my friends always really did enjoy Moon Knight. I never like picked it up in the 80s. Was reading so many other things,
Right.
but he was always a fan because I think it was that a certain level of I don't want to say like adult, but a certain level of like Moon Knight, he does kill. So okay, there's
Yup.
that.
Hmm.
Um, and when you compare him to other superheroes who try
Yeah.
not
People
to
were trying to
kill,
reel him in.
yeah,
He's trying to take it back. He's like, no.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he's that's another polar opposite from Batman. Batman doesn't kill, but Moon
Yup.
Knight's like, yeah, I
Yeah,
will.
you push me to the edge, you endanger somebody, you kidnap, you're a big drug dealer, you're a warlord, you're doing something that affects the city that's really harmful. Yeah, he's gonna come after you.
The gloves are off.
The gloves are off. Things that drove him over the edge, it definitely affects like what personality he had at the time, and kind of pushing those boundaries.
So does Frenchie play a bigger factor later on in the series of like coming out of the helicopter?
Sure, I guess they had his one-time wife, when it was mostly a long-term girlfriend. She visited him, but she's like, oh, this is the last time I'll ever see you, and then goes away. Turns out she owed the mob that she was affiliated with overseas like a ton of money, and she was trying to escape it, and she gets killed off eventually. And Frenchie comes and says, this is huge. We got to find her. We got to get justice for her. And really, they tackle that issue.
Oh,
So it's a very sad story when it happens, but getting justice for those characters is a lot what Moon Knight was about.
I almost feel like they were given like permission from Marvel to just kind of take the story wherever they wanted.
Mhm.
There is parts in this where you see like some of the editors pop up,
Yeah,
and so you get the idea that okay, more people are being recognized in these books, and it's becoming more mainstream,
sure.
and like shooter and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think for the most part, Moon Knight was able to just sort of explore some stories that
Yeah.
other characters who have been around for longer maybe didn't want to like spoil their reputation a little bit on, right? So they gave it to
Sure.
Moon Knight, like, here, take this
Sure.
serious.
Yeah. And then do you want to briefly touch on some of the art styles that we've seen?
Yeah, sure. There's tons of them. The omnibus, really, this one shows a really good range. Usually, what happens, just so everyone knows, an omnibus is collected by like one writer, and then that writer could have 5, 6 different artists. So the feel of a certain run changes drastically, and then you think, well, I
Yeah.
can't. This is disjointed. Like
Mhm.
sometimes it's jarring where it's like
It
switches
is,
art so
absolutely.
much.
I think I kind of felt that in the Black Widow omnibus when I was reading that, because there's so many different miniseries that Black Widow had. And so I'll be honest, when I started reading this omnibus, I kind of took the break halfway through before the solo run started.
There's a lot of where he's a co-star, and you want to read the actual run where he's the main guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, the art right away starts out even in the werewolf, and then when you move on to Defenders and things,
Mhm.
still the same. But
Right.
it was always,
It's very clean at the beginning.
yeah, I
The
want
Marvel
to
way,
say
yeah.
it was because they wanted to show emphasis on like the Hulk and stuff, and they weren't, Moon Knight was there, but they weren't going to pull away from their main guy.
Sure. Yeah, I think we were talking about the Defenders run, and like Keith Giffen and Klaus Janson have had a very Kirby style they tried in that. That was kind of fun to
Yeah,
look
Keith
at.
Giffen, I don't know, he was drawing like exactly like Jack Kirby.
Yeah, he is
It-
right. Yeah,
Same facial expressions, same hands, same Kirby crackle in the background.
right.
Really,
Maybe
a lot
that's
of
what the
ink.
editorials wanted.
Maybe,
could
or
have been,
just
or
that
just an
was-
artistic choice.
He was just a fan.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, they really started developing that. And when you get to the Hulk series, that look when they were trying to do like Marvel graphic novels for the first time.
Yeah.
That was really cool to see this difference.
Well, like a lot of violence happened off panel.
yeah,
So
that was Bill Sienkiewicz. Yep, that was his first
yeah.
run. Yep.
So it like left it up to you to sort of fill in the gap of like,
Mhm.
someone just got ran over by a car or whatever, but they don't show it. They just sort of talk about it. And then it's like you as the reader can fill in between the panels.
Yeah.
The other thing too, when you get to the Hulk, what was this?
That was
with the
Hulk magazine.
Yeah, it was Hulk magazine, and it had like a painterly feel. It was really,
Yeah.
it was really colored like the old sci-fi novels
Sure.
or sci-fi book covers.
I kind of compared it to when we read God Loves Man Kills. It's kind of that
Yeah,
style. 'Cause
like
they were
exactly
both
like that.
the Marvel graphic novel they were trying at the time.
Yeah, a
so
lot
they were
of
trying to keep that
shading.
feel.
Because usually when you're doing a comic, you have each large general shape is just one flat color. But
Yeah.
like that one, they did a constant like gradation and constant shading.
Yeah.
And they broke the page borders a lot, and they had all sorts of different. They didn't do just like an 8-panel grid.
Yeah.
It was pretty crazy. So
yeah. It was very I love that story. It
Feels
was
late
cool.
70s.
Yeah,
Yeah, really
yeah. They were
does.
really trying stuff. So I appreciated that. And just the artistry was really cool. And then when you get to the main run with even though Bill Sienkiewicz, that's how we kind of broke into it. When he starts the solo series, you kind of see just how creative he could get but still reeling it in, but kind of getting his own identity with the character.
Yeah, so him as an artist eventually grows to just being very splashy, very grungy. I think he uses a lot more of um, like the backgrounds and stuff.
yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
just abstract shapes and just you get the idea. He's sort of splashing ink and stuff. He just gets really, really way out there.
Right.
So a lot of artists are, they pride themselves on having a really tight style.
Yeah.
Their pencils are really meticulous, and then the inkers have to follow each little hash mark.
Sure.
He got more of like where each page was like a fine art piece.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I think about his art style in this run was that the movement, how he showed it, and how he like made it pop out. I thought that was really something that was interesting to follow.
Yeah.
Like some writers, some artists that we kind of, look back in the Silver Age and getting on the Bronze Age. That was the movement was very stiff, or you just kind of relied on it. What was going on in the panel, but he very showed it very well.
Well, and like he used the art to tell the story and cut down on some of the
the text,
writing,
the dialogue.
But like old school Silver Age, Golden Age, they were more interested in like writing novels and then connecting them to characters.
Sure.
And this way, they're doing it the other way around. They want their character to show everything they can do, for the most part, in fact, I think it really hasn't changed. But Moon Knight's costume, when it first appeared to where it eventually ends up, it's pretty much the same.
Right.
And it's kind of cool to have a all white, top to bottom, all white superhero.
Sure.
You're used to having colors, reds.
I mean,
and greens.
even Klaus Janson came back and helped him ink it. And then when they did the solo run, Denny O'Neil, we talked about our Green Lantern run.
Yes.
He was the editor at the time. So
okay.
that kind of explains, some of that 80s feel and just some of the dynamics and what they wanted to talk about. I think that was really came across.
Yeah, they started picking on the topics that were really popular of the day.
Yeah.
Equality.
It kind of all fits together.
It happened. Moon Knight was right there. So,
yeah.
So I think that's probably why Marvel, and that's why we wanted to review this and read it and just let everyone know is that, Marvel isn't just randomly picking characters. I think they're picking characters because they have hundreds and hundreds of characters. So they're picking characters that they think are relevant.
Yeah.
Nowadays.
Absolutely.
And it is a good time to come out with a series about schizophrenia, and it is a good time to come out with a series about anti-heroes or semi sort of where they're taking things on their own hands. I mean, even Batman's becoming more violent on the screen.
Yeah.
And people are getting more used to that. I don't know if that's a great direction to go and for everyone to say, yay, let's get more violent. But the idea is the audience now is willing to see these series as a really serious,
Yeah.
event.
I mean,
because-
Marvel's tagline for the longest time is "It's the world outside your door."
Mhm.
It's takes place in the same place you are.
They're-
Versus DC, where it's kind of them at Metropolis and the Gotham City,
Yeah.
and yes, there were similarities, but it was always very exaggerated.
yeah,
Yes.
and they're always like, "Where is Gotham City?"
Right, or
And,
Coast City, things like that.
Yeah. Or you always see like world-ending events constantly. Well, Moon Knight doesn't really have any world-ending events,
Nope.
so you get the idea that this really could happen in the city next to you.
Right. And he still they did some team ups with Spider-Man, with Iron Fist, Daredevil, things like that when they were doing the Marvel team ups, or he would still guest star later on. He was still doing that. He came from a very different perspective, and this is how I want to approach the situation. Gave him great character dynamics. So yeah, hopefully this helps everyone out there figure out who Moon Knight is. The only thing I guess I'll briefly touch on is if you see him in a suit, that's Mr. Knight. That was the only thing that came on later on in the series.
Like 20 years later.
Yeah, 20 years
Yeah.
later. So it's just, different writers and artists kind of pulling what, is going out there and just doing what they want with the character and kind of exploring different concepts of how can we make his personalities interesting and how we can better do.
Yeah, I think as a superhero, he's unlike what we've already seen. So
Sure.
people who are used to seeing Captain America and the Avengers and Thor and things like that,
Yeah.
this is going to be different,
Right.
and it's going to be still Marvel Disney combo different, but still, I think relevant and
Sure.
be fun.
Yeah, he's had some great writers over the years with Brian Reed and Brian Michael Bendis, Warren Ellis, Jeff Lemire, a lot of and then he has the latest run out I heard is really good. So he's similar to Daredevil, where these creative teams are coming along and they're really doing a great job leaving their impact.
It gives them a lot to write about. So
That's for sure. Well, all right. So thanks for tuning in, folks. And we hope you learned a little bit more about Moon Knight and are excited to see the upcoming series. All right. And this has been a great episode of Bam Pow Comic Hour with your hosts, Andrew Honor.
And Chris Ramos, good night.
Signing off.